So right after Renee Good was murdered in Minneapolis, two immigrants here in East Portland, not very far from my house at all, were shot by DHS agents. Those two individuals' names are Luis and Yorlenis, and they fled for their lives after DHS shot them both, one in the arm and one in the chest, I believe. They called an ambulance because they'd been shot, and they ended up being taken to the hospital where they needed surgery, but ultimately, unfortunately, were taken into federal custody. And immediately, the smear campaign from Tricia McLaughlin, Kristi Noem, and DHS started up. They called both of them violent Venezuelan gang members, vicious members of Tren de Aragua. Right, it's what DHS does, right? Anytime they try to murder somebody, anytime they victimize somebody, brutalize somebody, shoot somebody, they immediately say that that person was, and then like take your pick. Any way they can dehumanize and villainize them, they will. If the regime can convince people that it's not human beings that they're shooting in the street, it's not human beings that are being beaten, that instead it's violent gang members, it's thugs, it's aliens, it's illegals, it's Antifa, it's domestic terrorists, it's commies, it's pinko socialists, like whatever dehumanizing term they want to use, if they can convince you that none of us are human beings, it's much easier for you to accept the state violence that is committed against those human beings. So first, let me say, Oregon doesn't have a large Venezuelan population. There are fewer than 600 Venezuelans in the entire state. There's not a Tren de Araguan gang presence in Oregon. No. I'm so grateful to The Guardian and the really good journalism they're doing. They have a piece out today by Sam Levin entitled DHS Account of Two Venezuelans Shot by Border Patrol Falls Apart in Court. A smear campaign. Let me share this story with you because I think we hear the initial lies of the regime. We've got to assume that anything Tricia McLaughlin and Kristi Noem and DHS say is just like straight up bullshit. It's absolute lies. But I do think it's important to look at the way that their bullshit falls apart in court, to look at the way that the justice system has again and again and again checked their lies and defended the rule of law. I think it also really highlights the cruelty, the complete depravity of this regime, that they are perfectly happy to destroy people's lives, to destroy their reputations, their bodies, to disappear them wherever, to murder them, then basically try to like spit on their grave, smear them to the entire world. Right, the cruelty is absolutely the point. Okay, immediately after a U.S. Border Patrol agent shot two people in Oregon last month, the Department of Homeland Security said the targets were vicious gang members connected to a prior shooting and alleged they had attempted to run over officers with their vehicle. In the weeks since, key parts of the federal government's narrative have fallen apart. If you are working for the Department of Justice, if you're a lawyer for the DOJ or for DHS, I hope you never sleep well again. Fucking quit your job and do penance. I do not understand how any of the attorneys who are willing to prosecute these cases are able to look themselves in the mirror at all. The shooting happened on January 8th here in East Portland, the day after Renee Nicole Good was murdered in Minneapolis. According to DHS's press release and social media posts the following day, they claimed Border Patrol agents were conducting a targeted stop of a vehicle in Portland occupied by two members of Tren de Aragua. Yorlenis Zambrano Contreras, a woman in the passenger seat, had been, quote, involved in a Portland shooting last year, the agency claimed. During the Border Patrol stop, because Portland is within 100 miles of the U.S. border, the Pacific Ocean counts as a U.S. border, so Border Patrol can operate here, unfortunately. During that stop, Luis Nino Moncada weaponized their vehicle against officers, DHS said, prompting an agent to defend himself and others by shooting the occupants. It was eerily similar to the claims that they made about Renee Good. So Yorlenis was hit in the chest, Luis was hit in the arm, and both were hospitalized and then eventually taken into federal custody. No agents were injured. But court records obtained by The Guardian reveal a Department of Justice prosecutor later directly contradicted DHS's Tren de Aragua statements in court, telling a judge, "We're not suggesting that Nino Moncada is a gang member." An FBI affidavit issued following the incident also suggests that in the previous shooting cited by DHS, Yorlenis was not a suspect, but rather a victim of sexual assault and robbery. Neither Luis nor Yorlanis have any prior criminal convictions at all, their lawyers said. The press release from DHS tried to make it sound like Yorlanis shot people, was involved in a shooting. She was a victim of robbery and sexual assault. DHS will say all kinds of things on their Twitter. They'll say all kinds of things in press releases, but those are not the kind of things that attorneys are willing to say in front of a judge in court, because then they're going to be held legally responsible for the false claims. So what you hear from the press release often is contradicted by what prosecutors are willing to say in a courtroom. Immigration and criminal justice experts who reviewed the case records characterized the federal government's communications as a, quote, smear campaign against the two immigrants, with mischaracterizations of their pasts and unsubstantiated allegations of criminality. Luis, the 33-year-old driver, is undocumented and does remain detained at this point in time. He is facing charges of aggravated assault of an officer based on claims that he tried to intentionally hit the agents with his car. Yorlanis, 32, has not been criminally charged at all, but did have to plead guilty to improper entry into the U.S., which is a misdemeanor. Prosecutors have claimed the two were dating. The original claims from Tricia McLaughlin and DHS were that Luis was a violent gang member and that he was Yorlanis' pimp and that she was a prostitute, and they were both part of Tren de Aragua. Samir Kanal, who is a Portland city councilor, said the federal government cannot be trusted. Our default position should be skepticism and understanding that they lie very regularly. There's a playbook of demonizing people and claiming vehicles were used as weapons. We see a pattern of victim blaming, and it's important that we push back because it's propaganda. Yes, that's absolutely true. But we see establishment Democrats saying that they need Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Customs and Border Patrol to be wearing body cameras. They feel like that is going to be sufficient reforms of an entirely corrupt system operating as a violent lawless paramilitary. It's important to understand in so many of these instances, these guys have body cameras and they're not turned on, or the footage gets lost. In this instance, none of the 6 Border Patrol agents were recording body cam footage. The shooting occurred in a hospital parking lot, right? They shot somebody in a hospital parking lot. But the FBI, the whole area is like dental clinics and medical clinics and a hospital. But the FBI said in a January 10th affidavit supporting charges that surveillance cameras didn't capture any of the incident. The court filing itself summarized the testimony from 4 agents. 2 said they were fearful for their safety and claimed that Luis was trying to ram his car back and forth and back and forth. 1 said he was not fearful for his safety. The charges did not cite testimony from the officer who fired the 2 shots into the driver's side window, and that officer has not been named. Last week, prosecutors disclosed in court that investigators had obtained surveillance footage partially showing the incident. The video was not made public in court filings, but KGW, a local station, obtained and published it on Monday. The very grainy footage was taken from a distance. It has no sound, and it does not clearly capture the encounter. It shows agents following what appears to be Luis's truck into the parking lot and then approaching him. He appears to maneuver the car and drive off, though the moment of the shooting itself is not clearly visible. Sergio Perez, a civil rights attorney and former U.S. prosecutor, said it was alarming that the government filed charges 2 days after the incident while acknowledging it was still seeking video. The government needs to go back to the practice of slow and thorough investigations rather than what we consistently see in immigration enforcement activities, which is a rush to smear individuals. Okay, skipping down here, and I really encourage you to go read the entire article. Legal experts said it seems that the government's claim that the couple was affiliated with Tren de Aragua was largely based on vague and unproven assertions that there were gang members somewhere in their social circle. Having them seem guilty without any evidence, said Elliot Young, a history professor at Lewis and Clark College in Portland. He's an expert on Latin America and regularly testifies at asylum cases. He said, if they had evidence that these 2 are dangerous narco-terrorists, why didn't they charge them with that? Attorneys consulted said they felt like the federal government was dirtying up the defendant, and that in these cases, the credibility of the government and the officers testifying is everything, and they don't have any credibility. The prosecutor already had to admit in front of a judge that they are not claiming that either Yorlanis nor Luis are members of a gang. We'll see how all of this plays out in court. But please understand the tactics that the regime is using. to vilify the victims of their violence.